Coming up next on Two Cops, One Donut.
It got exponentially worse from there. He tied me into our bedroom, turned the heat up as high as it would go. I went to the garage and got a screwdriver and took the door off the one hinge that was remaining so that I could no longer be held against my will. There was verbal assaults, physical assaults. For what seemed like hours, I don't know what length of time. Finally had enough. I took the screwdriver and I smashed his watch and I said, "Tired of you smashing everything, including me."
All right, welcome back to Cops One Donut. I am your host, Eric Levine, and today we're going to do an episode about domestic violence, places to reach out, help, and some of the problems with the system in this. And my guests are Nancy Bordelon. Did I say that correctly?
That's correct.
All right. And Yvonne Harrison.
That's right.
How you doing, ladies?
Doing great.
Well, you guys built up the courage to come talk about this. So
Yes.
we've been trying to make this work for a little while. Had some issues. I text them thinking I had my days mixed up. I'm like, all right, so you guys will be out here tomorrow, right? And completely meant Friday, but in my head, like I said, I'm scatterbrained. So they're like, I think your wife will be kind of mad because it's
We show
Thanksgiving.
up on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, show up. So it's Black Friday. So by the time this comes out, it's going to be next year. But at least people will understand the timeline we're talking about. Yeah. So I give people a little bit of because my episodes are long. Like they go 2, 3, 4 hours. Just depends on how long good the conversation is.
Oh, we can talk.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Be careful.
good. Well, we've got talking juice, so that's good. Today we're sipping on a little smoke wagon, small batch, ladies. Cheers.
Cheers. Salute.
Oh, that's good stuff. Jamie's gonna be jealous. So this episode, like I said, we're gonna be going down the domestic violence aspect. We have done a few episodes. I've had One Safe Place. I've had another lady that she used to work with victims and trying to help them adjust and all that stuff. Then she realized nobody's working with the offenders to stop offending, so she kind of twisted her focus because her mom was killed by her dad.
Gosh.
While she was a baby in her arms.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh.
Yeah, so she's dedicated her life to that too. I'm blanking on her name. It's LaShonda. I can't remember her last name. I feel bad. Cheryl's Place is the name of, if you've ever heard
I
of that.
have heard of that.
Yeah, so that's her nonprofit.
That's awesome.
It was cool just to see her mindset twist. She's like, I'm helping victims, which is great, but she's like, I don't want these assholes out there continuing the violence because okay, they're gonna go to a new partner, and if they haven't learned anything, then so she's kind of like their wake up call.
Amen to that.
That's kind of how she sees it. Is like I am your end goal, or I am your end result. If you don't change the path that you're on, you will create another me. And so her goal is to obviously not create any more of her. So, but with that said, the first portion that I like to do with this is I just want people to get to know you. So we'll go with Nancy first, and you just tell us where you're from, where you grew up, what's your line of work, you got a family, anything like that.
Okay. Well, I'm Nancy Bordelon. I was born and raised in Fort Worth.
Okay.
I moved to Indiana in my 40s when I married my ex-husband. And I am a toxicologist, so I work for a pharmaceutical company. I'm a senior vice president, and I'm responsible for all the efficacy and safety of the clinical trials that we conduct. I'm a stepmother of 3 children who I now call my, I'm not sure what to call them, honestly. Like, they're not my stepchildren anymore, so they're kind of like my bonus kids. I love them all dearly. And I am still recovering from a 10-year relationship of domestic violence, and just want to share my story so that other people are more willing to share theirs.
Gotcha. So pharmaceutical toxicologist.
Yes.
Okay. Now, is that law enforcement involved?
No,
Not
it's
at all.
all
Okay.
about like a drug that you want to take into the clinic to treat. Like, we have one for cystic fibrosis, to treat cystic fibrosis, and you want to determine whether or not what dose you can give to people, where it's going to be safe, what you can tell the doctors to monitor for in the clinic, and that you have enough evidence to show that it could potentially work.
Okay.
So I'm responsible for that.
Okay. So with that, you can get a hold of all the good stuff, is what you're telling me.
It's pretty hard, I have to admit.
That is funny.
I'm not sure you want to get a hold of our drugs.
All right. Well, so is that like master's level?
So I
doctorate?
have my PhD in toxicology.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Board
you had me.
certified.
So you had me introduce you incorrectly, then, man.
Oh,
you should have been Dr.
Yes.
Nancy.
Dr. Nancy
Yes.
Bordelon. Yes, I'm
Ah,
board certified toxicologist and got my
AKA
PhD.
badass.
okay. So is it fair just to call you Dr. Badass?
Dr. Badass would be great. Thank you.
Okay,
I appreciate that.
I will put that when I post this episode. It's going to be Yvonne Harrison and Dr. Badass.
Yeah.
So
Sweet.
Fair.
I got the better name in that.
Okay. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this profession. So what drew you to that? Because that seems like a weird path.
Gosh, I graduated from University of Colorado in Boulder with my Bachelor of Arts degree in science. And I wanted to save the world. And I wanted to actually go into environmental toxicology where I could, clean up contaminated groundwaters and things like that. So I did my research in how to clean up hazardous waste fund sites. And during that time, I started working for the Environmental Protection Agency, finishing up my PhD research, and I just got fascinated with the way the body handles drugs. That we would call them xenobiotics, but drugs.
Xenobiotics.
Yeah, drugs and chemicals.
Okay.
And I just found it so fun. And I joined GlaxoSmithKline after I finished my postdoc and started working on drugs for diabetes and human papillomavirus. And it was just fun to be able to think you're making a difference in someone's life.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it had to be hard. I've been to Colorado several times, both military-wise and just on vacation. It's a hard place to leave.
It was very hard, but the pizza waitresses in Boulder have their PhDs. So I had to go.
Really?
Yeah, I had to go.
Okay.
I did my PhD work at Texas A&M.
Okay.
But when I graduated from Boulder with my bachelor's, I would have loved to stay there, but that was not the life that was laid out for me.
So the idea behind it, though, is service. You're trying to help people.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in my career, that's what I do, trying to help people with cystic fibrosis and
Now, was
all sorts of bad diseases.
were those the ones that you set out, or were you like, I'm going to cure Ebola, or were you?
No, it was really just to bring needed medications to patients. And I've worked for several companies, so their focus is on different diseases.
Uh-huh.
And so toxicology is kind of agnostic to a disease. It's really about safety and how to make sure that the subjects in a clinical trial are getting the appropriate dose that's going to be efficacious, but also minimize any potential safety concerns.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I do. Now there are like specifics for different indications, therapeutic indications, but the general approach is similar.
Okay. I told you before we got started, I'm a nerd, so like.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah, my
like-
parents still don't understand what I do, so maybe this will help.
I'm completely like going down that path, and that's not the path we should be going down. I love that stuff. Most of the podcasts and stuff. I'm a podcast listener. That's kind of why I started one. But I like the focused topics. Like I like that I can listen to somebody talk about stuff like I like to learn.
That could be its own podcast on itself because it is interesting.
Yeah, like of course you do it.
Yeah.
So I would hope you're interested in
the
your
number
career.
of drugs that have not made it into a clinical trial are staggering because of safety issues.
Well, that's
good.
Yeah. I don't, you know, now if I'm on my deathbed and it's something like I'm, stage 4 or whatever, give me whatever.
Absolutely.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Just
try it out.
Yeah. And then maybe in my death, I helped someone else. They learned, okay, there was positive effects. It was working, but it was too late. Like whatever it is. So that is cool. That's
what I do for a living.
That's awesome.
Keeps me busy.
You're a doctor. It's cool. I mean, it's the title. Like just saying you're a doctor. So I've got my master's in criminology and criminal justice.
So we should call you Master Eric.
Oh God, please don't say that. It's not a good title for a cop to have. I promise you. But I plan to go for my doctorate. That's kind of what this is, a part of that idea, because I did a study in my thesis for social media is underutilized by the police, and it's not properly used. The way we use it, I say, is like propaganda. Like, here's a cop petting a puppy. Here's a cop shooting basketball at the minority kids in the streets. It's great stuff. It's not that I don't think that is needed as well, especially with social media as it is. It's usually negative. So I like seeing the positive side, but I want to win the people that aren't a big fan of me. How do I do that? Well, I don't do that by placating the people that are already a fan of me. I got to have the tough conversations. I got to figure out, where are we screwing up? What are we doing right? What are we doing bad? And I'm never going to figure that out if I don't, one, talk to other cops that do the job and they give their perspective. Like I was kind of telling you earlier, I think cops get burned out going call to call in a big city, and you start to lose focus. And it's good to have somebody point that out to you as a cop, like, because you don't realize it about yourself sometimes. You're like, I got to clear this call. I got to get to the next because your sergeant's on your ass or whatever it is. And you do start to, I don't want to say dehumanize, but you just start to marginalize the calls, and that's time to move on. It's time to go somewhere else or have a different side of town, fresh perspective, all that stuff. So that is kind of the realm that this podcast is going around, is what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And how do we fix it? And what's the future? And that's for all aspects of the criminal justice system. So I have to have conversations with judges. I got to have conversations with prosecutors, cops, corrections officers, teachers, nurses. I think they're a part of first responders, ambulance, firefighters. And then we also have to have the other side of the coin, people that were on the opposite side of the law, whether it's intentional or unintentional. I had a guy that was wrongly convicted of homicide. He did 23 years.
I listened to that. It was amazing.
Yeah. And then I had another kid that was wrongly convicted, but he did commit a crime. He committed an ag assault on a guy that killed his family member. The guy that killed his family member got 12 years. He got 53.
Holy cow.
And he didn't kill the guy. So, you know what I mean? So, and then he got into like some of the problems with the corrections officers, problems with the court system that he saw. And then how the court system recognized its own failure and then fixed it. I mean, a little too late, 23 years. His whole adulthood was gone. He went in at like 17 years old. So, so that's the thing. Nobody's having these conversations, and we need to humanize all around. So I want people to get to know you, understand who you are, buy into you as a person first. And then once we buy into you as a person first, then we start having the tough conversation about what your story is, what you do for a living, all that stuff, and go down that line. So that's the idea. And that's what I want my, what do they call it? Dissertation. When you go for your doctorate, I want it to be based around what I found and what I've done throughout this.
That's awesome.
So we'll see if it works.
I hope so.
I want my girls to think dad's not as cool. The 13-year-old's already there. Like, dad's not cool anymore. So the 11-year-old,
you have a couple more years.
Yeah, I got a couple more years with her. So once that's done and I faded into the background, then I'll start entertaining the idea. And obviously you saw my wife is going through nursing school. She's about to graduate here end of December. So it's her time to shine. So I'm just kind of taking a back seat, doing this as a
awesome
fun hobby, and it's taken off more than I expected. So Now I got the doctors and stuff on my show. So.
We understand taking off more than expected.
Yeah. So exactly.
Yeah.
We'll get into that. So,
Yeah.
all right, Dr. Nancy.
Yes.
It's like Dr.
I thought
Drew.
it was Dr. Badass.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll see at the end. We'll see if it's
Okay,
still
yeah.
Dr. Badass.
Yeah, you might change your mind.
Yeah, we'll see.
Dr. Sucker might be what you change your mind to.
All right. So, Miss Harrison, go ahead with where you're from and your background.
So, do you remember the childhood story of the city mouse and the country mouse? That's me.
That's you. Okay.
So from here, grew up in DFW, born and raised in DeSoto, been in Fort Worth since 2020. I'm a junior Aggie. I never made it out of Tarleton State University to A&M.
They call them junior Aggies. Okay.
Senior vice president of a local bank. Have been in lending my entire career.
That's what my wife did for a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when I was stationed in Montana, she started cutting her chops in banking. She worked for a credit union and
Nice.
got into loans.
Yeah, a friend of mine from college called me up after graduation and said, "What do you think about banking?" I said, "I don't balance my checkbook." She said, "Perfect, you'll fit right in."
It's stringent. I cannot believe. Like she started out as a teller, I think they call it.
I got dropped right into the grease as a lender straight out of college and don't know how to do anything else other than commercial real estate lending.
Yeah.
So here we are.
It was weird to find out, like, 'cause when she finally started doing it, she's like, it's sales. It's really sales is what you're in. And I'm like, when I go to a bank, when I go to get a loan, I already know where I'm going and who I'm using. But I guess that's more rare than I thought because you have to actually like sell people on getting these loans and stuff. And I'm like, it takes a skill set. And then each state does it different.
True. I've never lived anywhere but Texas. So
Yeah. So where she was at, like, I think she got paid flat or I don't remember how it was. Basically, she had numbers that she was supposed to hit and she'd get bonuses from there. But then when she got here, I guess it was like commission based. I don't know that there was a big difference for her. And that's why she got out of it because it wasn't how she was used to.
Yeah.
And I guess it was less pressure and there's more pressure here.
For sure.
Is what she was saying. So,
I'm sure.
So now you're the VP. How long?
Senior VP.
That doesn't really mean anything in our world.
I'm just saying.
So how do you get president?
I don't think I ever want that job.
No?
No, I don't want to be responsible for other people.
No?
It's too much pressure.
As a VP, you're not responsible for anybody but you?
Me. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That works.
I'm a producer. Just let me produce. Let me do my thing.
Okay. So you love it, though?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a great career.
Yeah. How long you been doing it?
Gosh, 20-something years now.
Then you're aging.
I know. Let's not talk about that.
Okay. Sorry. I'm just trying to...
Too long.
Trying to exude the experience level. That's all. Make you a master of your domain. So, how long have you been doing the...
25 years.
Yeah.
25 years
Yeah,
toxicologist? Is that really the title?
No, it's the title is Senior Vice President of Non-Clinical Development.
So you guys are both.
I mean, that's so much more exciting than Senior Vice President of Commercial Lending.
So you guys are both Senior Vice Presidents?
Yeah.
That is funny.
Who would have thought?
Right?
Right.
Public school educated.
Same.
Hey, I am the same way. I take that back. My master's was through TCU. So, but thank you, GI Bill. I could afford it. So
Go Frogs get another win tomorrow.
I know,
Yay,
right? Isn't that crazy?
They're awesome.
I can't believe how good they're doing this year. Insane. My Lions lost yesterday. So
The Cowboys won.
Got my Barry Sanders jersey up here. I don't care about the Cowboys.
Oh, that's sad.
It is. Look, I'm an underdog guy, and nobody's a bigger underdog than the Lions because they have never been to the Super Bowl.
Oh.
So, and they lose all the time. It's actually funny because us diehard Lions fans, when we watch like the Lions play at Thanksgiving, it's a tradition.
So y'all all know each other?
Who?
All the Lions fans.
Yeah. We are one and the same. So when we watch, and let's ask any Lions fan, we don't say, all right, we're going to get this today. We say, how are we going to almost win it and blow it by our own accord. That's basically how we do it. So that's what we do, and that's what we did on this game. And that's what we did last year. It was the year before. We will have the game. We'll have it as long as they play smart, safe. They should win, and we figure out a way to blow it. So yeah. I mean, you guys understand the same pain. You ain't been to a Super Bowl since like the 90s. So.
Well, I remember going to the Frogs games, and when I was in middle school and high school, you could get in free because they were so horrible. And we would just walk around the stadium like as kids and, you know, just have a great time.
It's crazy how
now they're
I never heard of them when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I never heard of TCU. I never heard of TCU till I moved here.
Wow.
Yeah, never heard of them. So, and then I became one.
I
So.
know. They suck you in.
They did schmooze me. They took me out to dinner. They showed me the campus like I was important. I really wasn't.
Nice.
They had kicked off a new criminology program, so they were trying to get locals and try to, you know, get you through. So they totally won because I was going to go to a Michigan university, Michigan State. I hate saying that because I'm a Michigan Wolverines fan, so that's their rival, one of their rivals. So I was going to go there for school, and TCU won me over. So
That's awesome.
yeah, so you just support local.
Huh.
But all right, let's get what are we? We're 20 minutes in already, so we've hit you guys a little bit here. So you guys have a common story that brought you together. I shouldn't say common, so you have a related story that brought you together. Domestic violence. Being victims of domestic violence, having kind of a fucked up system in a way that kind of really screwed you over. So we'll get into that. I don't care who wants to go first or who goes first. I don't know which side to go
paper.
to. But
You go first.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna go with Yvonne first. So Yvonne, tell me.
I'll drink.
First off,
I'm gonna need one too.
yeah, your relationship and how the signs and symptoms were that you had along the way, and up until the epiphany incident that caused everything. Does that make sense?
Okay. So, how about I start with how we came together. Does that work?
Fine for me. We'll do the Tarantino version where we start at the end, go
and
back
then
to
work
the middle,
our way back. Yeah,
and
there
then
you
go to
go.
the beginning. Yeah.
All right, perfect. So we had a mutual friend. Well, let me rewind. Both of us were going through divorces that involved domestic violence, and both separately seeking out support groups, and could not find that for professional women. So we had a mutual friend that introduced us and said, well, maybe you can be your own little support group together.
Okay. So can we dissect that part a little bit? Because a lot of people aren't going to understand. And what she means, if I'm wrong, tell me. What she means is typically domestic violence support is for low socioeconomical classes. The support that comes out, like they want you to come stay with it because you have nowhere else to go.
Correct.
It's different when you are, like you said, a professional. You've got your own home. You got places you can go. You got family support. You got different things like that. So where does that support come from? If you're law enforcement, stop and listen to me right now. If you're a police department that does not have an LPR system, Insight is offering the first 10 agencies, that means one agency apiece, gets one camera for free. You have to tell them that 2 Cops, 1 Donut sent you. You heard me right. If you're a police agency that does not have an LPR system yet, or does have an LPR system, and you're not happy with the product you have, Insight is offering you a free camera. No strings attached, and they will install it. I have 10 to give out. Tell them 2 Cops, 1 Donut sent you, or reach out to me, and I will get you in contact. If you're a business owner or an HOA, please stop and listen to me right now. If you're just listening to the audio, do yourself a favor and watch the YouTube version of this episode to get a visual of what I'm about to tell you. I want to tell you guys about Insight LPR. It's a license plate reader. If your agency, community, or business is looking to invest in LPR to help solve and deter crime or to to make your community safer, Insight LPR has my vote of confidence. I've met with their team. They know their LPRs, guys. They're the real deal. They bring over 75 years of collective experience to building LPR cameras and the software that supports communities across the country. The other thing I really like about this team is how much they listen to law enforcement. They understand the importance of working together with law enforcement and getting their input as they build and innovate products and their service to match the needs of law enforcement. In other words, when I complain or have suggestions to make their damn camera better, they actually do it. The Insight LPR team is extremely passionate and takes pride in their product development, which makes their cameras some of the most durable cameras in the market. For the gear nerds out there, what that means is this stuff's made of military-grade aluminum and is nitrogen purged, whatever that means. This design makes the cameras rugged and able to withstand harsh weather elements. Here's the big selling point for me. Their nighttime scan accuracy is higher than most of the leading competitors. In my opinion, this is what sets them apart. As we know, the majority of crimes occur at night, so it's critical to have high scan accuracy at night. Insight's cameras check the box with the nighttime plate read accuracy greater than 96%. 96%, guys. That's pretty freaking high. If your community is looking to invest in LPR technology, reach out to one of their experts today, or reach out to me. Tell them 2 Cops, 1 Donut sent you.
So I'll rewind and say I actually had, through some friends, reached out to some local organizations, and it turned out to be exactly that. So in order to get to their counseling, and I had a counselor, she was fantastic, but I was really needing to get to counseling that specifically worked with domestic violence. And I hate the word victim, but I'm going to use victim. But in order to get to that, you had to attend 4 virtual classes to qualify to go to their counseling. So I made it through 2. The first one was over how you need to feed your children 3 times a day. I don't have children. I couldn't relate. And not only was it doing me a disservice, but it was doing other people that were on a call the disservice, because it was abundantly clear that there was no commonality.
Were they trying to teach you how to be a parent?
Correct.
That's
and listen, I in no way want to discredit what they were doing, because there are definitely women on that call that needed that support in that direction. But that's what led me to, okay, where is there a support group in Tarrant County for professional women? There's not, that I was able to uncover. And a lot of that is because professional women hide this. They don't want to talk about it. They want to keep it private, and they want to keep it quiet. And I too did that for a long time. But I also knew that part of my healing was going to be interacting with other women. I have a fantastic support group personally. I have fantastic friends. I have great family support. But unless you've been through it, it's just so difficult to try to explain how you're feeling or how you got, where you were in different situations. So our mutual friend put us in contact together, thinking that we could be that for each other. And so we talked virtually a couple of times, and then decided to meet and had a cocktail, and it was just an immediate connection. We spoke a language that we couldn't speak with friends, family, what have you. And I don't want to speak for you.
Oh, that's fine. Go ahead. You'll say it better.
But, Nancy was sort of feeling the same thing, but in a different state, not finding the resources that she was needing in a different state. And so we script out on a cocktail napkin what we wanted to do and how we wanted to rectify that. Hence, 2 Girls in a Napkin was born.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay, so I don't want to get too far ahead, because I understand you guys have an organization for support that you're trying to get going because of what you've been going through. So this show is, obviously, I told you, it's an educational part, and as well as where's the problems and how do we fix them. So your organization is part of the solution, but let's go back.
So we'll rewind to the problem.
Yeah, let's rewind
That's
to
why I'm
the.
like, you can do this.
I know.
I'll go
Here I
first
go.
If you want me to, I'll go first.
Okay, go for it.
You want me to go? Okay.
All right.
All right.
This is why it's a great partnership.
I love
We
it.
know
Almost
when we
like
need
a
some
marriage.
support.
Yes.
I love it.
So, okay, so mine started actually in graduate school.
Okay, so not Dr. Badass yet.
I was not Dr. Badass.
Okay.
I met my ex in graduate school. We dated for about a year. He was so amazing. He gave me gifts. He was so much the life of the party, extremely intelligent. But he started to belittle me and make me feel like my research wasn't as interesting as his research, that I wasn't with a professor that was as good as his professor, and he would yell at me a lot.
So little
things,
little aggressions in a way, but it adds up.
It added up, and I broke up with him and moved out to North Carolina. We kind of, because he's a toxicologist as well. So we live in the same community, and it's not a large community. I moved out to North Carolina. I finished my research. He finished his research in Texas. We went through several marriages between us. He was married twice and divorced, and I was married twice and divorced.
Okay.
And we got back together. I guess it was 11 years ago now. And he had 3 kids and 2 exes. But I thought I was special and different.
Okay.
I thought I was like the person he was supposed to be with.
Because you had the history.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we moved in together immediately. It was all just, I'm the most amazing person on the planet. The world spins around me, and everything was wonderful. And 3 years into it, we got married. And then, I guess 3 years ago, it became obviously abusive. But the reality is our entire relationship was based on lies. I found him, I guess the end of the story was we were going through marital counseling. I found him in his office dressed up like a woman passed out on something. And this was me going to his office at 4 a.m. because he wasn't coming home at night ever. For like 2.5 years, he wouldn't come home at night. And I would just be alone, and I would be crying in the closet or locking myself in the bathroom or trying to force myself to not go and look for him. And I found him that way, and we went to counseling. In the counseling session, he admitted he was using meth. He also had HIV and syphilis. And I knew those things because he had told me that 2 years ago. He had actually given me syphilis. I went through treatment. I don't have HIV, only by the grace of God.
Holy shit.
And he had convinced me that he got that from doing top secret research at a contract lab, keeping in mind we're toxicologists. And so I believed him. Okay. And then I would look at research. I'd look for any little bitty article there was on HIV going and syphilis being from like research, and there's nothing.
I'm not very familiar with syphilis in itself. I know the name. I've heard of it before, but what is syphilis?
Syphilis is a sexually transmitted virus, and it causes skin lesions. It stays with you if you don't get it treated, it stays with you forever. It actually gets into your brain and causes like CNS, central nervous system type issues. You get like puffy face and nose, and you look horrible, and
Is
it's
that
nasty.
is that why they wore powdered wigs back in the day?
I have absolutely no idea.
Does it make you lose your, or does it something to the hair?
It does all sorts of awful things, but the thing that I know most about, and the only way we found out he had it, was that it causes skin lesions.
Okay.
And so, like, there's lesions on your hand, and it looks like a cold rash. It doesn't look that nasty, but if it gets out of control, it goes everywhere. Anyways.
Okay.
So he had convinced me that he had gotten that through that means. I feel like I'm going back and forth.
No, you're fine.
But when we went into counseling after I found him dressed up as a woman, passed out, keeping in mind that night I found him dressed up, he was very high, and I didn't know it, and very violent. And during counseling, he admitted he was using meth. I checked him into rehab that night. And when I woke up the next morning, I felt safe for the first time in 10 years.
Dang. So you didn't realize the totality of all that?
I had no idea what was going on. I mean, he would throw things at me. I would make up some excuse. He would tear up the closet. He was just frustrated. He would blame me on literally everything, and I couldn't do one thing right, not even hanging a picture, not even making dinner. And I'd just be like, I married an asshole. But what he was really doing was manipulating my mind and gaslighting to me to where I truly thought I couldn't do these things. And I truly did hide in a closet. And I did hide in the bathroom and lock the door because I didn't want to hear his yelling. I didn't want to hear his screaming. I didn't want to let myself get in the car and drive to the office to find him. I didn't want any of those things because whatever happened was going to be bad for me. It would never, ever be his responsibility or his fault. All of it would be on me. And so I just stopped caring. I just spent 10 years of essentially just taking it. It's constantly from every direction and stopped caring. I would just blow it off. And it didn't even with the HIV, I was like convincing myself this wasn't from him being with men.
Yeah.
Or from him cheating or whatever. It was from him going to meth parties and dressing up as a woman and being in these crazy situations where there's no control over anything. And then putting my life at risk because he'd come home from those parties and we'd have relations.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like in every form, verbally, mentally, physically, sexually, I was abused by him. If you asked him, this is all my fault. There is nothing he did that's wrong. And he will still say that to this day, even though he wears a mask over his face to hide meth sores. And the counselor that he sees in court-appointed family counseling with the kids that he has turned against me, she requires a security person present. You know, the meth or whatever has destroyed his mind, and he has convinced himself that I am the cause of all evil. And so, honestly, I would be afraid for him to ever know where I lived because I think he could do something very bad.
So he's not in jail or anything like that?
No. I called the police 4 times. One time, the first time, was when he called me, and this was when we were still married. He called me at like 2 or 3 in the morning, obviously out of his mind, but I thought he was food poisoned or something. He was throwing up. He said he couldn't drive, then I needed to come pick him up. Well, I called the police, and asked the police, called 911. They came out. We all met at the Best Buy parking lot in Avon, Indiana. And I pulled up just as the police pulled up, and they just did a quick scan of his eyes. And said, "Do you want me to take you to the hospital?" He said no. And then he crawled in the back of my car and we drove away. If they had insisted on that, they would have found all sorts of drugs in his system.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a year before it got really violent and abusive.
When did the physical violence start? You said
It
you were together
wasn't-
11 years?
We were together for 10 years.
10 years.
Like physical violence, and this is part of what I want to convey on website and teach people, is not just punching someone in the face. That's horrible. It's not throwing someone up against the wall. It's throwing things at people. It's destroying the property. It's making you fearful of your own safety.
Yeah.
And he never hit me. Well, he did kick me in the stomach once. But that was nothing compared to all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Like
The psychological.
ripping out doorknobs from doors and throwing them around my presence. Getting all of the clothes in the closet and ripping them off the rod and just throwing them around the room. And just the terror of, putting their arm right there when you're right here. And just making you feel so scared.
Yeah.
That was like the last year.
Okay.
And then the next time I called the cops was when I was out of the house. He was living in the house. I was living with my friend. Thank God I had friends to live with, because we were going through our divorce at that time. And I was worried for his safety. I actually cared about this asshole that did all of this to me. I mean, I could spend 20 hours telling you the horrible things he did and we wouldn't have enough time. But for some reason, I was worried about him. He had sent me crazy texts. His texts were unreal, unbelievable. Some directed towards me about how much he hated me and wanted me to die and rot in hell and be raped by Satan 1,000,000 times. Some were that he loved me. These texts that I called the police over were essentially what I thought he was going to take his life. And so I called the cops. They went over there. They spoke to him, went in the house for an hour. They spoke with him, tried to get him to go to the hospital with them, get help, because they knew he was on drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing happened. And so those kinds of calls, I did one more of those calls. So it was 3 times that I interacted with the cops. 4. So I did 2 safety calls, and then one when I had moved back into the house. He was court ordered to vacate the home. I moved back in, and I was worried for my safety because he was patrolling.
Well, because the house was destroyed too.
The house had been destroyed.
Oh,
yeah.
so you broke in and...
The house had been destroyed when he was living there. He destroyed the house, $10,000 worth of damage.
Yeah.
And
this is a common thing that happens in domestic violence. And
it's awful.
From a cop standpoint, you're looking and you're like, he owns the property too. And this is the excuse you're going to hear from cops. I'm letting you know, you probably face
I
the
don't
same.
know. It's like it seems to be there should be a fix.
Yeah.
Like, what can a cop do to help that woman
It's
or
hard.
man or whoever, child or whoever it is? Because I felt helpless.
Yeah.
Like he said, the cop said, we'll drive around the neighborhood. And they did. I mean, this is a great community and the cops there are wonderful. And they did drive around the neighborhood, but there was nothing they could really do.
Yeah.
And they said, just don't go outside.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's my house.
Yeah, now you're a prisoner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
mentally and physically.
Yeah. And it took me when I checked him into rehab, which was in August of last year, probably a good 6 months to realize that I actually was a victim of abuse.
Yeah.
All during that time, I was thinking it was my fault.
Really?
And yeah. And it took lots of counseling, my friends and my family intervening, my sister making me move back to Texas for some time just so I could get out of the fog of the nightmare I was in, to realize that what I was going through wasn't normal. That's not a normal relationship. people fight, but they don't do what happened to me.
Right. Which what I'm looking at from an outside perspective is it is a normal thought process, I think, for a lot of people. They see a domestic violence victim and they're like, poor socioeconomical class, like, education levels lower. Okay, I get it. Like that, like they don't have the tools and stuff like that. But then they're going to look at you and they're going to go, this is a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Domestic violence does not discriminate across
yes,
socioeconomics, culture.
Yes.
At all.
So that's what I think is important to point out here is like it isn't, and if you are able, and I don't want to say manipulated necessarily.
I was manipulated.
You were manipulated.
Absolutely.
But what I mean is that you got the highest education level that comes, and it still affected you. So it's important for people to distinguish that we're all susceptible to it.
Thank you.
All of us. And so, one, I'm very sorry that happened, obviously. But two, I'm glad that the police at least did try to do right. It stinks because you hear these stories, and I've caught myself in the same thing where I'm like, this poor person, like I can't stay here all night. I would love to. But what tools do I have? What tools have I been taught that I have? That's another issue. We'll get into that because sometimes there's things out there that we have available I didn't even know about. And how bad does that stink trying to help somebody and you had no idea that you had these resources available? So I've actually thought of this before. And when you brought up the fact that you're a prisoner in your own home, a lot of times it comes down to just proving, like, because it's your word versus theirs.
Well, it's funny because the cops were supportive. The court system was not.
Oh.
So I had videos of him threatening me. I had videos of him screaming at me and yelling at me in front of the kids, telling me that I was a worthless human being. I had video of him trying to hit me with a broom. And during that entire time, I would share these with my lawyer, and her response would be, that's not enough. That's not enough. I wanted a restraining order. I had emails from him and text messages that were, I don't even know how long. They were novels.
Yeah.
About what a horrible person I was and how I should run, how I looked like a donkey-faced whore. I'd sucked every dick in the community, which I didn't, by the way.
Just for the record.
Yeah, just for the record. That I should be raped in hell for eternity. If he found me in a fire, he wouldn't piss on me to save my life. That he had to swallow his own vomit when we married. These are the kinds of things I got from him.
Mm-hmm.
And
at the time you're getting these,
I'm sending them to my lawyer.
Okay.
I wanted a restraining order. No, it's not enough. It's not enough. Nothing was ever enough. And eventually I wrote her an email. I said, so essentially enough is when I'm dead.
Exactly.
So what you're telling me is I have to actually be killed by my ex-husband for it to finally be enough to get police to have a restraining order against him.
What did she say she needed?
Violence. She needed documentation of
okay.
violence, which was me being checked into a hospital with a black eye or a broken nose or half dead.
Oh.
And I wasn't any of those things. I mean, even when he hit me, it didn't hurt that much. It was just all the other stuff. I mean, it was horrifying. And I would sit on my back patio and it had some windows and we had like there was a cornfield behind us. It's Indiana. And he knew how to hunt. He was a really good hunter. And I always would think I need to go in a different room because he could be in that back area and he could be aiming a gun at me right now and I wouldn't have any idea. So I had to check in with my parents every morning that I was alive. And nothing happened with the legal system. I have honestly a War and Peace novel with the number of emails, not including texts, of how he wanted me to die.
So in this process, like the marriage, okay, so we're getting before police really were getting involved and stuff like that. But like in the counseling, did the counselor not recognize the signs and symptoms?
So we went through we went through 3 counselors. The first counselor, he never showed up. And I gave up. That was about 5 years into our marriage. The second counselor I hired to figure out what was wrong with me and why my husband wasn't coming home. Not knowing. And I have evidence from credit card receipts. He was staying at Motel 6s, buying meth and porn, and going to porn shops and smoke stores. And about $20-something thousand worth.
What the
in a year.
fuck?
Anyways, this is how messed up my mind was. I was trying to figure out what was wrong with me.
Yeah.
So I hired the next counselor to do that, and she wanted to meet Kevin, and he never showed up. Then we got a third counselor. He met Kevin, fell in love with him. I thought I wouldn't like you, but I do. You're a great guy. You're so funny. And all the time I'm like, I can't get him to come home. I can't get him to pick up the kids from school. I can't get him to do anything. All he does is yell at me and yell at the kids and treat us all like shit. And then the counselor started to pick up on it. I found an email from through his emails that said to meet him, to some person on Craigslist, to meet him for a blowjob and poppers. And I told the counselor about that. And the counselor is like, oh, maybe he is having an affair. I'm like, yeah, this email I found was from 5 years ago. So he's been doing this.
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't see him anymore.
Oh, he wouldn't.
You need to mark that time down.
Yeah. I was...
Wouldn't see him anymore. Then the last counselor we went to twice. The first session was a get to know you session. The second session, she recognized the signs of meth addiction. This was over Zoom because it was during COVID.
She recognized it over Zoom.
She's my hero.
Woo.
She's my hero. She asked him straight out, "Are you on meth?" And he said, "Yeah." And then I said, I was truly
shocked.
But then all of this information comes flooding back on me, like everything
makes sense.
And she helped me find a place. I checked him in that night. And then after that, just the PTSD and the memories that come flooding back that you don't even remember existed. Mm-hmm. They still come. Like even today, they came while we were getting ready for the podcast. Like it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
You want it to go away, and it doesn't.
Yeah. And that's why it's post-traumatic. I mean, it's me, as much as I've thought that I never had PTSD in myself just from being military first responder stuff. There's a show on, I think it's Netflix, but it's about a domestic violence relationship, and I can never remember the name of it.
Dear John?
No, it's
Ugly
like
Betty?
It's The Maid, or
the Maid. That's fantastic.
Is that it? The Maid.
Yes.
Okay, so you guys can attest.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching it, and I'm sitting there, and whoever wrote that story, and I'm getting choked up thinking about it. Whoever wrote that story has gone through domestic violence themselves, because I had a lady that I didn't have anything to do with it. It wasn't violence to me, but she, for whatever reason, I remember that. And when I was watching that show, like, it triggered me. And I have never had an episode of PTSD or anything like that. It was when she was in the shop to get clothes. I'm sorry.
We're all going to take turns with
That's
that
okay.
today. It's okay.
Anyway, it bugged me. Obviously, it still bugs me. And like you said, I didn't know it affected me because it had nothing to do with me. I'm just trying to help people. So, the post-traumatic stress part of it, like you said, you start to think back and you're like, Jesus Christ, like I'm losing my train of thought because I keep thinking about her. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Impact Tactical. Impact is a tactical outfitter for the men and women of our military, police, fire departments, and other public safety around the country. Impact's core beliefs is that fearless men and women protect our freedom and safety should have access to the best tactical performance apparel, equipment, and tools on the market. And they shouldn't have to go broke to get it. I've used Impact for about 11 years, and I can attest that they do live up to their core values. So you get a personal recommendation from me. You can find them at impacttactical.com. That's MPAK tactical.com. And be sure to tell them that 2 Cops, 1 Donut sent you.
I wanted the one scene in that show that I truly related to was when she went back to him and she was sinking into her sofa. And she went into this like vault.
Yeah,
area.
like a cave or yeah.
That's how I felt for the last 3 years of my marriage. Like I just wanted everyone to go away. I wanted no one to look at me, no one to see me. I wanted to literally disappear into the walls. And that show was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, and that was like I said, having gone through the process and handling so many different types of domestics and stuff. And then you do occasionally run across like the nuttiest of situations that you could ever consider. And I remember getting this lady to, shout out to One Safe Place. I got her to this women's shelter thing and ended up being great. It was like one of the best things that ever happened for her. But for me, it was handle the call, get her to the right resource. And I made sure that, I personally took her there and was trying to make sure everything was taken care of. And that was it. I've never had contact with that person since. So for that to, like you said, you don't think about it for 20 years or whatever it is. And then I'm sitting here watching the show and she's going in and asking about the clothes and like, everything's free, but we're trying to get you back to normalcy. So it's like, holy shit, that's so eye-opening. And, I'm, like I said, I'm not the victim of it. It wasn't me that went through it, but it's got a trigger for me. So I can only imagine what it's like for y'all that go through it. So, sorry, I went down a rabbit hole. No.
Well, it is interesting because the people that are going through it have their perspective, but the people that are watching it are also experiencing trauma. Like my family is traumatized by this whole thing.
When did they start to know? I mean, were
not
they
until I told them. I lived with the secret of HIV and syphilis for 2.5 years. And when I checked them into rehab, I called them the next day. And I told them everything. The cross-dressing, the syphilis, the HIV, the abuse, the meth, everything.
And he probably had them tricked as well.
Oh,
like, They probably thought
not my sister.
Not
my sister.
Sister
always
him.
The sisters.
She knew.
She hated him. And in fact, my sister and I, our relationship broke up over him. But she was the one there to get me out of the house when he got out of rehab. She was not going to let me spend 1 minute with him.
Really?
And now she's my best friend. But the trauma on them is very different. Mm-hmm. So like the trauma of you seeing that is very different, but it still exists.
Man. Okay. I kind of want to do this systematically. So we got your story. I want to get into your story.
Okay.
And then from there, we'll get into the fixes, how we started to mend, how we started to create, positive, and talk about what could have been done better throughout the whole thing. So we'll go that route. So we'll go with your story now, if you're ready.
I can. Not ready, but I can't.
So
I'm going to need a little after that.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, here you go.
Yes, ma'am.
Fill her up.
Yes, ma'am. So I'm going to skip past all of the how we met and get to just the meat of what happened. So during the Ice-mageddon, whatever, snow apocalypse.
Like 2012-ish. Yeah, that's when I moved here.
2021.
Oh, the other one.
February
okay.
2021. Okay. There had been several things leading up to this, a lot of aggressive behaviors.
How long had you been together?
We were together 18 months. Very quick courtship and marriage. We were married 131 days when this incident happened.
Who's counting?
Gotcha.
Still very triggering. Punching holes in walls, punching through doors, breaking the windshield out of my car by throwing a Tito's bottle through it. My family had told me, if this aggressive behavior continues, you've got to call the cops. The aggressive behavior continued. He broke all of my devices, my phone, my iPad, so I had no way of reaching out for help anymore. I remembered that my iWatch has a separate phone number on it. And never you mind, I mean, we're 4 days into no electricity. My watch had just enough charge on it to get a call out to 911. And then it hung up. He had said in front of me, he had pretended, I don't know if he pretended, I don't know if it was real. He said that he had called the cops. He said he was on the phone with 911 saying, my wife wants to call you, but she can't, so I'm doing it for her. So I don't know what call they responded to. I don't know if they responded to my iWatch call that hung up. Did he really call? I don't know. This is in a rural county to the west of us. Sheriff's department showed up at the door. It was a female and a male, and separated us, talked to us. The male cop, well, they both actually said, if you don't leave, we can't protect you. We're iced in for 4 days. Where am I going to go?
Mm-hmm.
I'm scared to drive anywhere. I can't get in touch with my family. I can't get in touch with my friends. I have no means of communication because they've been destroyed. So I said, I'm staying. And besides that, I'm fearful. Look around the house at the damage that's already been done. How much more damage is going to be done if I leave here? So the male cop says, can you shut and lock this door? Well, it's hanging on by one hinge on the top. Doesn't look like it's going to protect me. Long story short, they left. It got exponentially worse from there. He tied me into our bedroom, turned the heat up as high as it would go. I went to the garage and got a screwdriver and took the door off the one hinge that was remaining so that I could no longer be held against my will. There was verbal assaults, physical assaults. For what seemed like hours, I don't know what length of time. Finally had enough. I took the screwdriver and I smashed his watch and I said, tired of you smashing everything, including me. How does that make you feel? Stop. Backed into our closet on the floor, trying to make myself as small as possible. This can't be happening. This is not real. Long story short, I tell him I want a divorce. I tell him I'm filing for divorce the next day. He headbutts me. I knew my nose was broken because first I heard it. Secondly, blood everywhere. Now I have to leave. I don't have a choice. I can't stay here. It's not safe. So I get in my car and I'm scared to death because it's pitch black in this, where I live, outside of town. I have two thoughts. I can drive to the police station or I could drive to the ER. I have no idea where the police station is. No clue. I know I need medical help. I drive to the ER. My nose is broken in two places. Two male cops come in, questioning me, very young. One comes in and says, "It's really bad, isn't it?" "Yeah, it's really bad." "No, I mean, it's really bad, right?" "Yeah, it's really bad." The other one comes in. I can literally hear these two cops outside of the door of the ER arguing back and forth with each other. "Let me ask her." "No, let me ask her. I want to ask her." "No, let me ask her." The female cop that came to the house now comes to the ER. She comes in and talks to me. She says to me, "I have to choose who the primary aggressor is here. And because you've told these three cops different stories, I'm choosing you. And I'm charging you with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon because he has a puncture wound on his hand." "What? Is he here? Where? I don't understand. I don't understand." The next day, I meet with my attorney, and I'm showed a picture, which I would love to show you. Puncture wound on his hand. Sorry, I'm shaking.
It's okay.
This was my charge of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and a puncture wound.
Show him the picture of what he did to you.
All of my injuries did not present until the next day. This is the next day with my broken nose. Not to mention 20-something bruises all over the rest of my body from physical assault. So not only was I traumatized by this perpetrator, I was re-traumatized by a cop who didn't believe my story.
A female cop.
Yes. 13 months later, everything was dismissed. I have severe PTSD now. I'm deathly afraid of cops. If If I see one, this is what happens. I can't control it. I don't want to be like this. I go to my knees. I lose my words. I can't talk. I can't breathe. To a cop, what do I look like? I'm something. I mean, I look guilty. What's wrong with you? Why are you acting this way? I'm acting this way because of you. And I am not here in any stretch of the imagination to motherfuck cops. Obviously, there are very good ones out there. Our mutual friend that put us together. Trust him implicitly. What I am here for is there needs to be more training. And especially in these rural communities. And I have heard this story over and over again. It's not just me. And it's scary to speak out because I wasn't believed then. It's shameful. Senior vice president of a bank.
Yeah.
Can't have an arrest on my record, which is a whole nother topic. By the way, it stays for 5 years. It's not eligible to be expunged for 5 years. How is that? I'm not guilty. Why do I have to earn my innocence back?
Yeah. Despite the case didn't go anywhere, obviously.
She was acquitted.
Yeah.
Everything was expunged.
Right.
But yet she still has this on her record.
Yes.
Yes.
That is across the board with a lot of charge, not just domestic violence, but that does happen. And I don't know the fix for that either.
Well,
she's going to fix it.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
I'm speaking with a congressperson who is going to take this forward in spring.
Nice.
And I hope we have 2 girls and a napkin law change come next spring. But this is my point exactly to what we're doing. If this can happen to me, this can happen to anyone.
Yeah.
I've never, the judge says to me on the day that I'm in jail, how in the world did you go from having a traffic ticket to an aggravated assault charge with a deadly weapon? And thank God I don't even know his name. He said to me, I need you to hear me. I need you to hear that there are 2 sides to this story, and you will have an opportunity to tell your story.
Good.
But how many people is this happening to? I have every resource in the world to make changes.
Yeah.
Every resource. What about the women that don't?
Yeah.
And that's why we're here.
Yeah, I just think about the women that, like, we're fortunate. We have We're fortunate. We have jobs. We had homes, family,
finances.
We had no kids. Neither one of us. I mean, I had stepkids, but, a woman that is going through that, either one of our stories, that has stay at home, kids to think about, no escape, no family, no friends, no job, no car, nothing.
Yeah.
What do they do?
Exactly.
I don't know what would have happened to me if I didn't have those things.
And part of the awareness that I'd like to make to people out there is what I've seen from my side of the table is you get a victim who's been, victimized continuously, all this time, years, months, whatever it is. And you get pushed to the brink where you have to fight back in some sort of way. And that's where the master manipulation really starts to take place. So to set your mind at ease, at least with one cop, because I know you guys, at least you have issue with police. I try to see through that immediately. I try to see through, you've pushed this person who has 0 record. You push this person to the point where they did something back and now you're trying to play victim. And I see through your bullshit. So, our mutual friend, Jamie, I'll call him out. Love him. Good guy. he's one of the people that trained me to be who I am as a police officer. And I had come from two different places. I'm a military cop, and I was a cop up in Michigan. So I learned a lot from him. And some of the stuff that I have learned through Jamie and some other police is just stepping back, trying to not see things at face value. But you take a person like you that has a clean record, and you look at that. Like, that's stuff cops, and I ended up training more cops on this show than I ever thought. The real intention was to train the community, like help the community understand different perspectives and have that dialogue. But really what it is the community comes and tells us stuff, and now the cops are seeing a perspective they didn't get to see. And so that's kind of the fun part of, you never know where your research is going to go, and you see some positive things. So,
well, there's a word for it I've come to learn. It's called trauma brain. And the story changing is, there are definitely things in my mind that I know exactly when they happen. And then there are terrible things that happen that I don't remember. Did this terrible thing happen before that terrible thing? Did that terrible thing happen before that terrible thing? And I may tell you the story, and they may not be in the same sequence that I tell her the story.
Right.
But that does not mean they did not happen.
Right. And then the cops, their training just tries to look for inconsistencies in a story. And that's the bare bones of that training. And especially if you got newer officers that haven't, that's kind of the sucky part about police work, is like your first 5 years, that's what we call a rookie. You're a rookie your first 5 years, because first you're trying to process all these laws that you just learned, how you can apply them, civil rights, whose rights, like, I don't want to violate those. That's bad. So you could be the best people person in the world. You could become a cop, let's say at 35 years old. You've got a lot of life experience prior to that. And you're great at talking to people. But then all of a sudden I just dumped all this stuff that you have to apply while you're out there in the street. Now imagine trying to talk to you. I could talk to you all day long. But now I got all this stuff weighing on my mind. And I'm like, all right, am I allowed to stop her and tell her she can't leave? Like, it's not an excuse maker. I'm just trying to show you, like, the thought process.
Sure.
So I want cops to learn from what you just said is, look, there's symptomatic issues with PTSD. So when you were talking to a domestic violence victim, you have to understand inconsistencies are going to happen. It's going to be a thing. And so I want them to understand that now, so we can get them in that first 0 to 5 years to understand, okay, I get that there's some inconsistencies, but what is consistent is there's some trauma here. Mm-hmm. And focus on that, not major in the minors, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I would go, so there's actually dash cam video, not dash cam, whatever.
Body cam.
Body cam video of this female officer with my perpetrator in my kitchen laughing about it. That's never acceptable.
Yeah.
Never acceptable. And Nancy and I talked about this on the way here. I mean, I like to think, don't have a doctor in front of my name, but I like to feel like I'm pretty intelligent, done okay for myself.
Yeah.
Where was I going with that? Just trauma
the
brain.
Dash cam video, her laughing.
Seriously, this is a real part about it.
That's okay.
Yeah.
You cannot remember. I'm so sorry.
It
happens.
If you watch the history of I'm almost at 100 episodes. You will see me lose my train of thought.
It's with me now.
That's why.
Eventually the wires do connect again. You just got to give me grace for a second. My point was, if you could charm me, if this narcissist could charm me, then why should I hate her for him charming her too?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
And that's what happens. I mean, that's what happened with Kevin too, and the officer that came to help him. The officer that came to help him was so sad. And so oh my gosh, he was so sad, and the officer was so kind. And The officer had no idea what that man had done to people. And it wasn't just me, it was to his kids, his ex-wife, his ex-ex-wife. Had just no idea of the history. And I guess if I could go back in time, I wish. And the officer did call me after, he gave me an update, and he went back again the next day. I wish he had forced him into the police car and brought him to the hospital, because it wouldn't have saved 10 years of abuse, but it would have saved 6 months, which is 6 months of abuse you don't have to deal with.
Yeah.
And it would have also given me more ground to stand on for restraint orders. And with his mother, like the mother of the children, at that point we weren't friends. Now we're best friends. But at the point where all that happened, she just had to believe me that what I was saying was true. I had no evidence in front of my face besides I checked him into rehab. And to have some sort of, the police took this seriously and brought him in. They were just so nice. He was a pillar of the community, and they just were like, he's just going through a hard time. It's like, well, not really. He's putting everybody else through a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks like he's going through a hard time, but he's really high as a kite.
Okay. So in your experience, what were the police doing right?
They were being very responsive. They were there. They picked up the phone whenever I called. They went to the house when I was concerned. I read emails to them, text messages. They went to check on him. What they didn't do, and so they did a lot of things right. They did more things right than wrong.
Okay.
What they didn't do right was take the next step, the hard step of this guy that name's plastered all over every softball field in the city, has a business in the city. Everyone knows. He brings the cops donuts.
We like
what they
those.
didn't realize was that they should have taken the next step with him and brought him into the hospital.
Or arrest.
I don't know if you can get arrested for doing drugs and being high in your own home, but if they took him to the hospital and had a psych check, like just anything, it would have helped him too.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't live in a world of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And to have something on paper.
Yeah. So for me, looking at, I will tell you how one cop would have tried to handle what you were going through had I had the information that you're giving me. And this is just to give people ideas. Other cops give ideas. If I have somebody that I think is going through this same situation and drugs are an issue and the rehab isn't helping and all of this, I'm just going to set up and wait for that person to leave. And I'll be personally, or I will get narcotics involved if you got that ability. I have a department where narcotics is a division, so I can use an undercover car and let them just follow him. Wait for a traffic violation, which we all do, even me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's so hard to avoid an actual traffic violation. Pull him over and try to catch him with narcotics on him.
I think they actually did that. So one of this, and I knew I was missing one incident where I called the police, but the situation was that he was living in our house. It was actually my house. It was under my name and I was financing it. But he was living there because the kids and I, so one night I went to my neighbor's house. I was just hanging out and there was this random car in the thing. And I called the cops. I don't know who this person is. They're at my home, blah, blah, blah. I said, I know he has a friend from rehab. And I gave him the name. And these lights went off with the cops. I could tell over the phone. They're like, oh. I could give you its initials, TJ.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh. And And so they came that night. I took pictures of the car. They came that night and they followed TJ out the next morning and pulled him over. What had happened was, I guess TJ didn't, I don't know what the situation was, like what happened in the end, but I did get some horrific emails and texts from my ex about it.
Really?
Yeah, that his friend was homeless and recovering from meth and just trying to do good for a world, and now I've ruined his life again. I just continue to ruin everybody's lives.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was like in my home housing a homeless meth addict, which I feel like I want the house that I pay for and live in to be under my control.
Right.
I mean, I think it's horrible that this guy's in this situation, but there's other ways to help him.
And what stinks as a cop is we're now stuck in the civil realm because he's living there. And in our state, in Texas anyway, he technically, according to the eyes of the law, he lives there. I can't say anything about him inviting somebody else to come stay there because he's got just as much right to have people there as you do.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
Yeah. And that is, it's as a cop, it's a shitty situation to be in, especially if you really start to understand the background. You know, like, let's say it's the first time we've ever dealt with each other. I never met you. I don't know the history, and maybe I can look at the call sheets at the house and say, okay, we've had a lot of domestic issues here, but I cannot kick somebody out of a home that has a legal right to be there. And by you letting him stay in your home that you pay for, that's a problem.
Lots of eye rolling going on this side of the table.
But I get it because you've heard it. I know you've heard it. And what do you do? It is so hard because now we get back into the PTSD and the victim mindset because you're trying to make this. You don't realize the path that you were on at the time. And so you're trying to make it work. You're trying to make this stuff go the right way. And here the cops come and we just exacerbate the issue because we can't do a fucking thing.
Well, and all the while, those 13 months while these charges are hanging over my head, continues to stalk me, stalks me, follows me for miles, threatens my trauma therapist, and there's zero repercussion at all. As a matter of fact, all the system did was, what am I trying to say? It protected him, but it also, I mean, it just fueled his addiction is what I'm trying to say.
Because he knew he wasn't going to get caught.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this just continues. It just perpetuates.
Yeah. And I'm hoping you at least see that one cop.
Absolutely. Listen,
gets
once
it.
again,
Yeah,
I go back to, I'm not here to mother truck every cop on the planet. That is not my end goal.
Yeah.
But I would like to see, you know,
it needs improvement.
It needs some improvement.
It needs improvement. And part of that, you got a legislative writer, apparently. So that's huge. Or at least, who'd you say was advocating? Well, you don't have to say the name, but.
Yeah, a congressman.
A congressman. Okay. So that's a step in the right direction. And then point them out to this episode. I mean, they need to see that this is what it is. And perspective. It's really what it's about. So
absolutely.
Perspective. And officers, like I said, think about it. I mean, you get it. We're life experiences, I like to call it. You know, I'm 40, but I grew up in Flint. Seen, if you're familiar with Flint, Michigan. I've had a lot of life experience. I've seen both sides of the law.
Groundwater contamination,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. So, you know, and then with all the shops closing, it caused crime to, you know, and that's been happening since the late 80s. But crime's an issue out there, to say the least. And it's having that perspective and being the kid that was kind of borderline on both sides of the law. I think it made me a better cop. However, a lot of officers, the point I'm getting to, young Boy Scouts, as I like to call them, grew up, you know, straight laced, clean cut. Now they're dealing with life experiences they've never seen. And it's not that it's not that you can't see it at that level, but it's more uncommon. And now you're asking them to come and try to deal with those situations, and they don't know what the fuck to do because they never experienced it. And now we get the issues like that you had, where she had, I would say, almost the complete opposite experience. Mm-hmm. So we need to take what happened well with your guys, figure out the bad, that because there's always good and bad.
There's some things that could have been done differently, but there was nothing bad done.
Right. But there's stuff that could be improved.
Good that could have been done to help both me and him.
Yes.
But all in all, I mean, I thought they handled everything really well.
And here's the part that frustrates me with domestic violence, because I had this mindset in my first couple of years because I hadn't really faced domestic violence, but I'm like, you should be able to get out of this. You've had, like, you're given why would you let yourself be put through that?
Oh my gosh.
I went through it for 10 years.
Right. Why would you let yourself be put through that? Why would you, he's hitting you, he's abusing you.
You start to feel like you deserve it.
Yeah. And then you got a cop coming to the scene. I fully admit, I was one of those guys my first couple of years until another officer is like, dude, you can't look at it like that.
It is a systematic deconstructing of your personality.
Yeah.
To where you don't even recognize yourself. Mm-hmm. So it is not something that happens overnight. It is a slow progression, and then your brain cannot process the terrible things that happen, followed by the love bombing and you're everything and I'm so sorry. Yeah. They're so polar opposite. You get lost in the disconnect between those two things.
Yep.
I'm an incredibly independent woman.
Yeah.
How many times have I heard that? Why didn't you just leave? Mm-hmm. Why isn't the question, why is he hitting you?
Yeah. Yep. And police are typically fixers. That's what we try to be. Where that's our mindset. Like, all right, how do I give you a solution to fix this issue?
It would have been haul him away to the hospital.
Yeah.
That's what mine would have been. Fix it, haul him away to the hospital. Don't be nice to the guy that just brought you donuts 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Just take him, even if he said doesn't need to go.
Yeah. And so,
even if the wife says he doesn't need to go.
Yeah.
Because they're programmed to protect him or spouse, whatever,
right.
Or assuming it's the woman all the time, which it happens the other way around too.
And that's one of the things I love about these. This has helped police work a lot more than it's hurt. And you get a lot of, like you said, not necessarily females, but you get a lot of domestic, because I've seen and I want to make people aware, like, it happens the other way around.
It does.
And these have been a godsend. They've really helped out people in bad situations. However, like I think it was you were saying that you had some video, you had some,
and all sorts of video and text messages, like countless.
A protective order against me, and phone calls, emails, text messages. Get home, come home. If you love me, come home.
No,
with a protective order.
Yes, sir.
Oh my Jesus!
It was my sister. Thank God, that recognized I was trauma bonded to this person, and said, she begged me, don't you dare, because what's going to happen is you're going to go back.
Yeah.
He's purposely sucking you back into this.
Yeah.
And then somehow you guys are going to get into an argument or something, and he's going to call the cops, and guess what? You're going back to jail.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be released until your court date, which would have turned out to be 13 months after.
So for those not familiar with a protective order, it's different than a restraining order. A restraining order is more civil. A protective order is ordered by the judge. Like, if this person comes within this vicinity, whether it's 500 yards, 500 feet, whatever it is, they go to jail automatically. No questions asked.
Yes.
That is how that works. So what she's referring to, this happens a lot. The person's like, no, baby, I'm sorry. We're good. And they get back together. And then they get in an argument. And then somebody calls the cops, and then that protective order is still there. It doesn't go away just because you got back together. And now that person, no matter if there is violence, whatever it is, that person goes right back to jail because they are on a judge's order.
Yes. And it was, meet me here in this place. Nobody has to know. Come meet me here. Begging over and over and over everything he could do to get me to break that protective order.
And how hard, I'm just going to say, just from the abused perspective, was it to say no?
It was incredibly hard.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, it was so hard for me to even understand. We've said this before. I know it sounds stupid, but I don't know that I realized that I was in an abusive relationship. I thought this person had whatever, this issue going on, that issue going on. They were just whatever, drank too much and acted out, whatever. It took me a long while to understand that this was manipulative and abusive. This wasn't just you're having a bad day.
Yeah. What was if there was one, what was the epiphany moments for you guys?
Well, the epiphany was being booked into jail and sitting there going, I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand. I still don't understand. And here we are all this time later, and I'm still saying, I don't understand.
So that was the trigger towards your ex. That's what I'm getting at. Like what broke that bond that you had towards that person? If it ever really truly broke.
Oh, yeah. Multiple counselors, trauma therapist, Dr. Michael Ellison is the bomb. Attorneys sitting me down and saying, I've seen this episode before.
Yeah.
And this is what's going to happen. And attorneys saying, if you answer this text, if you go back, if you whatever, we will not represent you. Because they've seen it before.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
That's one piece of advice I give to everybody that is going through stuff like this. I'm like, they're going to text you. Do not reply.
It's so hard.
Don't. I said exactly. I say it's going to be the hardest thing you can do because they're going to love you, love you, love you, love you until the point that they get, to the fuck you, bitch. Why don't you recall, and then they're going to bait you. You're not a good mom. You don't do this shit, whatever it is. And that's going to trigger you and you're going to be like, fuck you. And now it's game on because you replied.
Absolutely. I had to go zero contact. That was the only way that I could get through it is I absolutely had to be zero contact, which I don't have children, so I'm able to do that. That doesn't work for women, for everyone. No, you don't have the luxury of going no contact.
Yeah.
I'm not I think my trigger to leave him was the admission of meth. Like I was actually I was staying with him already through the HIV. I was willing.
Really?
Yep. I was willing to stay through him for the cross-dressing.
But that's because you bought into the story.
I bought into the story. And the cross-dressing, I can't tell you how much research I did on to that as to why people cross-dress.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't until the meth that I decided I needed to leave him. But it wasn't until, I'd say it was about 6 months when I decided that we were really over.
Yeah.
And he had gotten so crazy, it made it easy. But I had to stop responding to him too. I had to block him from phone, from email. I still want to see his kids because I love them. So I communicate with their mom. I still hear stories about him. And honestly, what he's doing now to the kids is what he did to me. It's just repeating the same shit.
Really?
Over and over and over. Yep. Fortunately, they have her.
Yeah.
But they're going through their own manipulation and emotional and verbal abuse. They're not going through the physical stuff.
Yeah.
But lies. Like, they have no idea why I left Dad. They think I'm evil.
Really?
Yeah. Because I left him because of drugs. Because they don't know anything else. And so I'm referred to as Bordelon. Gotcha. I don't have a first name anymore. And I'm evil. I stole the home from them, even though it was my home. And the only one that, two of the three want to spend time with me. The middle one wants nothing to do with me because he thinks I ruined their lives. He wrote a whole school essay on it.
And this is another important part to point out is I listen to you guys' stories and I see the struggle of considering everybody else. It's not just, we're not just talking about the person that victimized you. We're talking about everybody else that surrounds your fishbowl. Now you've just become possibly the bad guy. And that weighs on, like, I know I would go to the ends of the earth for my kids. And I love my wife. We've been together since 7th grade. We've known each other since we were 5. I would avoid anything, despite she could cheat on me, she could, whatever it is. I don't want to change that image of mom to them. That's just my mindset. And I know that. I'm okay with that. That's fine. Because what happens between us is between us. But now we're talking about something totally different.
That's not what happens when you're with a narcissist.
Right.
Yes.
They make it about you.
Right.
He has turned everything is literally my fault. I stole the home from them. Keep in mind, the home was under my name and I paid for it.
And this is another doctor, correct?
Yeah. Well, he retired, quote, and went into selling insurance. But so I never saw a dime of what he brought in. He had sold insurance for 5 years of our marriage and never brought a dime of it in because he was spending it on meth and hotel rooms and hookers and men and I don't even know. So I supported the family. And the court, when we finally got to court, forced him out of the house, which was the whole scene.
Yeah.
That did involve cops. And it's just all a nightmare. And now the kids, honestly, one of them wrote an essay about how relationships are dispensable and you just throw out old shoes and go buy new shoes and, I don't know. That essentially suggesting that I just gave up on them.
Yeah.
When I actually didn't. I stuck with their father through some really hellish times.
Stuff that nobody should have to go through.
Mainly because I loved them.
Yeah.
And I love them so much.
Yeah.
And I miss them. And I just, I just constantly pray that one day I'll get to spend time with them without being under his power and control.
Yeah.
We'll see how that
what's their age range?
11, 16, 20, 21. I actually support support him.
Yeah.
He's in school and college. I pay for his college. I pay for his housing.
And he's good with you?
Yeah, he doesn't speak to his father. He's good with me.
Okay, so basically what we're getting at is life perspective. They're too young.
Yeah.
Hopefully that'll switch.
Prayers.
Yeah. One of the things I want to ask you guys was embarrassment a factor?
Absolutely.
1,000%. Well,
I'd say it's more than embarrassment.
Oh
shame.
my gosh, it's
like,
shame.
Because I look at it, I'm like, you have nothing to be embarrassed about.
It's humiliating.
But
your husband's not coming home. Your husband beats you up.
You have an arrest?
Yeah, you have an arrest. It's humiliating.
A potential felony charge?
Because people don't believe what you say. People look at you and they think, what is it that you're not telling me?
Right. There's
What's
two
the
sides
other
to the
side of
story.
this story? Yeah. And it's like, you know what? Sometimes there's just one side. Yeah. I've always been told there's two sides. Sometimes there's one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other side is drug addiction.
Yeah.
I mean, it's...
And narcissism.
Yeah.
So...
Oh, yeah, definitely mental issues.
Oh, my perpetrator would email everyone he could possibly email, including people that I work with.
Really?
To try to destroy my character and my career. Everything he possibly could do, which is exactly why I'm speaking out. Because if I I could bury myself in shame.
Yeah.
And never say anything to anyone and just keep going on in my life. But if I do that, then he wins.
Well, good
And
for your
I
employer.
will not allow that to happen.
Good for your employer for looking out for you.
Oh my God, my employers have been so amazing to me.
So my.
Yes.
Because I that's one thing that drives me insane is like, we don't want to be wrapped up in this. Like, no, that is, if there's ever a time to go all in, is to back an employee that you know.
My bosses circled me, protected me, walked me to my car when I was fearful to walk to my car. I'm still afraid of this person.
Yeah.
I live every day in fear of this person.
Mm-hmm.
So they,
Yeah.
I
My employer gave us a support person for our website.
Oh my gosh.
They're
Yeah.
letting me do like a support group at work. Last year, I'm pretty sure I didn't work full time.
Yeah.
I don't know how I kept a job through all of this either. Which is really an awesome segue into
Well,
two girls in a napkin.
Yeah, right.
Can we take a bio?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're back. Sorry, we had to take a little potty break. That's fine. Let me see here. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask you guys, okay, going through what you've gone through, and this is me, cop dad mind, I guess. I had a guest on here. She is she's Army National Guard type thing. She's her main thing is she teaches women firearms.
Mm-hmm.
So I was curious. I always thought it would be a good idea from that perspective of being a victim of domestic. And I put it in quotes because I don't like looking at you guys as victims. You're
We're overcomers.
Yeah, you're survivors.
Yes.
So in that, do you think it would be a good idea or a bad idea to be taught by a female that is empowering you and taking control over your safety in another aspect, to learn firearms and how to carry?
Absolutely.
100,000%.
Yes.
And
we both
do
own guns.
carry.
Now, what were your thoughts on guns prior to that?
I was terrified that the perpetrator would get it from me and shoot me with it.
No, I mean completely about guns prior to even being victimized.
Being raised in Texas.
I know,
had
we're
no
raised in
issue.
Texas.
Yeah.
I had my
Okay.
own girls clay shooting
But
team.
I do have a lot of friends that are against it in Indiana. But, ironically, pretty much every single one of them said, in your case, you should get a gun.
Right. I have found being a victim of something oftentimes pushes somebody the opposite way when it comes to the gun debate. And like I said, not a political thing.
Yeah.
I have found in my career, like, people like told me, hey, I would never allow a gun in my house. But after going through what I've gone through, I want one.
I am loaded by my bedside.
Yeah.
And yes, same.
But if I had kids, loaded by my bedside might be a different situation.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't do that, but I don't have kids in the house.
I literally have 3 loaded guns right next to me, right?
And it's about teaching the kids.
Yes.
Yes.
But my
respect
kids
towards
grew
gun.
up with them. So
Right. Yeah.
and you being Texans, you kind of understand. But yeah, my kids, I take away the curiosity. I'm like, if you ever want to mess with one, let me know. We'll sit down and it becomes educational. That's what my grandpa did with me. He's like, if you ever want to see my rifle, let me know. I will show you how we take it apart. And then it's your heart's content. He would let me put it together, take it apart, mess with it, look at it, whatever. But it was the education part first. He let me do that a couple times after I come over. After that, I lost interest.
Yeah.
And that's my kids.
My uncle convinced me to get a gun. I just got it. One of my friends took me to get it and showed me how to use it. And my uncle lives in Colorado, but he's like, you really need one because you never know. You're a single woman now. You live on your own. You have a crazy ex that could come after you at any minute, and just go learn about it. So I did. And and I realized that a lot of the fears that I had about it, with being it taken from me.
Yeah.
If they're that close, you missed your
Missed
chance.
your opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah. The moment that person shows up, it should be out
Yeah.
because they have no business being in your life. But,
And it should be loaded.
Oh, absolutely.
And, like I was always taught, keep it unloaded with the gun separate from this and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, what good does that do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if your life is at risk, you have 2 or 3 seconds?
Yeah. What they say is when seconds matter, police are minutes away. That's, I mean, that's really what it is. Your safety is your responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah.
My trauma therapist actually turned me on to Krav Maga and started taking Krav Maga classes. And that helped a lot with what happens if you're in a situation where you feel like it could be taken away and that sort of thing. So,
yeah. That's on my list.
I would promote jiu-jitsu over Krav Maga personally. Okay. That's just me.
Maybe I'll do that.
Know anything.
We can have a tournament.
Yeah. So
that could be the next podcast. Yvonne and Nancy.
Yeah. If you guys ever look into the self-defense aspect, I've been doing self-defense stuff since like 2006. My dad's a black belt in judo and jiu-jitsu. It's in my family.
Okay, well, perfect, because I want a private instructor because I'm not really comfortable going to these classes, and there's still a lot of triggers around around the...
And martial arts are male-dominated.
Yes.
So, I get it.
What am I trying to say? Like the exercises, I don't know what they call them, that you're doing. There's still a lot of triggers around that, so I'd love to find somebody that I can just do one-on-one training with.
The firearms instructor I was referring to, her name's Jara Hutchins, so I want to give her a little shout out because that's her. You look at her social media, she is the Spice Girls. That's the only way I can put it. She's just woman power. You know what I mean about everything, and I love it's constant. She just stays the mission of women. This is what we do. This is what we got. This is how we survive. This is like all this. I just like what she does. And it's important.
We'd love to meet her.
So yeah, if you ever want to, I'll get you connected for sure. But yeah, she's good. But as far as the firearms, when there was a kid that was kidnapped, and it was pretty famous. It didn't happen too long ago, without mentioning the department, but it was caught on Ring video camera of the snatch, and it was like a legit and it was in a prominent neighborhood type thing.
I know this story that you're talking about.
And
they found her in a hotel.
Yes. So in that neighborhood, she had put out, I teach firearms instruction, and that's she was trying to basically say, Second Amendment right, you guys should focus on that. And they were kind of against her, but then that happened, and all of a sudden she had a clientele of like 230 people overnight.
I bet.
So, just because of that, like I said, she's awesome. But I was curious what your thoughts are, it being in your world and what's going on with you. What you thought on that?
Well, I live in a rural area on acreage by myself, and so between two alarm systems and guns in my headboard and everywhere else throughout my house,
that's good. If it's giving you peace, I think that's important. So, all right, out of this, we've obviously heard some bad shit the cops did. We've heard some good stuff that the cops did. How would you like to see law enforcement fix some of the stuff you've seen, the gaps in the training? How would you like to see that? And then what is it that you guys have created to start helping victims in your shoes?
So I don't have the resources, the knowledge, the education, whatever, to fix the cop problem. However, I did mention that I sat down with Tarrant County Women's Center. Laura Hilgart, I think I'm saying her name correctly, was fantastic. And she really is the first person since this that has taken a proactive approach in contacting the organization that I had mentioned that I reached out to that just wasn't the right fit for me, and talked through some issues with them to make a change.
To help improve them.
Absolutely.
For people in your shoes.
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense.
She also mentioned, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, She made a kind of an offhanded remark of, it sounds like I need to get in touch with this PD department and get them some training. Now, I don't participate. I'm not on the board. I don't have any knowledge of everything that the Tarrant County Women's Center does. But apparently they do something along those lines.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad to now be connected with resources that can make those changes. That's not for me. That's not really my battle. That's one part of my story, but it's not my battle. My battle is I want to educate other women on if this can happen to me, this can happen to anyone.
Yeah.
There's nothing special about me. And yet here I am.
Mm-hmm.
So,
For me, I think I don't know anything about being a cop. But had there been some uncomfortable follow through, private conversation with the woman, in my case, me, say, how do you feel about this? What do you want to do?
That was never asked?
Nope.
Really?
Mm-mm. If that had been asked, I would have said, take him to the hospital. He just got in my car. And, and follow through on what his gut was telling him. He knew.
Yeah.
He knew he needed help.
Yeah.
And it's uncomfortable, and maybe I don't even know if it's crossing the lines or not. But being willing to kind of step over the comfort zone and doing something a little bit beyond, because who knows how that could help a person.
Mm-hmm.
And then, for us, I think, my story is a story of a decade of subversive abuse. And I truly didn't believe I was an abused person until I was out of it for months. Our website is about sharing stories of domestic violence, whatever shape or form it comes in, and helping people understand all of the different facets of it. It can be physical abuse. It can be emotional, verbal, economic, social,
sexual.
It can be anything. And we want to collect stories so that people that go to our website can find a nugget in there that they relate to.
Yeah.
Either for themselves or for a friend or a family member, and start sharing the word that Yvonne's story is awful because she went to the hospital, and, the whole thing is horrendous, but there's so many people that don't have to go to the hospital that need help.
Yeah, that's psychological warfare.
Yeah.
Yes.
And psychological warfare is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But it was psychological warfare before I ended up in the hospital.
Exactly.
And so had I seen something, that little nugget that would have resonated, that said, this isn't right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just getting the word out there that the website exists and that we want stories and we want people. It's not for our own self-promotion. Yeah. It's honestly so that people can stop thinking it's just throwing someone up against a wall.
Yeah.
That it's a lot more than that.
Yep. It's the mind battle that you have to go through with somebody that you cared about or care about. I mean, you may still care about that person. Doesn't make you any worse. You can still, even through what you guys have gone through, it's okay to still care about that person. I would say it's just you need to care for yourself at the same time.
The only care I have for that perpetrator is that no other woman experiences what I experienced.
Yeah.
My care for him is that he lives.
Yeah. I get it. I get it. And and I'm trying to help those that still feel what you guys felt before the epiphany, because that's really what it is.
It's like a dark chasm of nothingness.
Yeah, because you're battling with, you think you care for this person, and you want to get them help, and marriage is the base premise is through better or worse, and then now you're battling with that. If religion is an issue, there's a struggle. If common sense is an issue, well, you're not thinking straight. So there's all these different facets. So I'm just trying to help people get the courage to see that nugget that you guys talk about of, you think you care for this person. And is that the one string that you're hanging on to before
Or they care for you.
Or is that it?
I don't know. Like for me, it was like I cared for the kids. I wanted the kids in my life forever.
Yeah.
And honestly, I thought I would have gone through anything. But it wasn't until the meth thing, finding out about that I realized, because that made me realize all the other stuff was lies.
Right.
But, like I don't care for him.
Yeah.
It's taken me a long time to say that. I care for the kids.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I care for his health and well-being is because I don't want the kids to have to lose a father.
Right.
And for me, I didn't want another failed relationship and another failed marriage. I would have done anything under the sun to prevent that from happening, including accepting really horrific behaviors.
Yeah.
And I don't want another person. You know what? It's okay to have a failed relationship. A failed relationship is perfectly okay.
Yeah.
It's a chapter in the life of your book.
Yeah. I mean, you tried, and
Yeah.
it just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, the outside factors that we let put our personal safety in jeopardy. And that's really the way I kind of see it when I hear you guys' story. Is it isn't that you weren't thinking. It's not that you're not intelligent people. It's not that you don't have common sense. There's so many factors. It is such a complicated subject. And it's hard for people that have never seen it or witnessed it to even fathom or get their mind wrapped around. And I think the reason I have an easier time putting myself in those shoes is, one, my military experience and seeing some of the PTSD, being a cop, seeing the accumulative traumatic issues that cops go through, seeing all the time, having my own father who went through a shooting, talk about some of those things. And it's just seeing a lot of the stuff that I've seen, but not everybody has that same perspective.
Sure.
So the nuggets, I like that. I'm going to stick to that. The nuggets, seeing those nuggets, I think you're going to help somebody with that.
So Nancy and I mean, we're just getting started. We have so many ideas and ways that we want to grow Two Girls in a Napkin.
Sounds like you need a podcast.
We've talked about that.
We're talking about it.
For me, it's writing. I can write and make you feel what it feels like to be in that situation. I can't sit here and explain it to you, but somehow I can write it in a short story, and you will feel it. One of the things that we want to do is to have, we keep calling it like a pop-up installation. We don't know what it is.
Like an art installation.
Yes, where you don't have any experience with this, but you can walk through this, and we have ways that we can make you feel.
Kind of like The Maid.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
like it's an immersive
exhibit
Yes.
on kind of the phases of, I mean, we've focused a little on narcissism because in this case,
That's what we know.
That's what we know. But, just like the cycle of abuse and, almost like a roadmap of, you can take this road and keep going down this cycle of abuse.
Yeah.
Or you can take this road and get help. And so we want it to be like the road of the abuse is experiencing the different, not really experiencing, but, feeling what it feels like to be in an emotionally or verbally abusive relationship, what it feels like to be in a physically abusive relationship, and then what it feels like to be drugged back into it with the love and the kindness and the just enveloping you.
The experience I would say that complements that is if you've ever been to DC and seen the Holocaust.
Oh my gosh, it's the most amazing museum on earth.
Yes.
Yes.
So that is the ups and downs that you're referring
That's
to.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then they take a path to go. You can choose the path of least resistance and go back into the cycle, or you can choose the path of uncomfortableness and change and courage, and then that's the path where you get help.
I have a friend. Okay. He's a photographer, former intel in the Army. He won, this is such a weird way to describe him. He won one of those game shows, where you compete. I cannot remember the name of it. It's a brain thing. He's a think tank guy. You talk to him, good guy, but he's able to just break down and capture emotion through photography. Like, I look at one of his photos that he does, and I'm just like, I see the story that and it's all real stories. Like, he goes and he does a lot of time at food banks and stuff like that, and he'll just pull a random homeless person or a random helper. He's got some barbers that come down and just give all the homeless people haircuts for that day, and he'll take their story. He'll take pictures of their hands and take pictures of it's all usually black and white, but it's very telling. Like, there's a whole story and emotion behind his photography, and I'll get him connected with you guys.
That would be great.
Absolutely.
Try him out. If it works, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But
that'd be great. Yeah.
But that for the direction that if you want to go that direction with something, he would be a good start because he's already doing museums and doing stuff like that.
Yeah,
I'd love it.
I mean, we can talk about this until we're blue in the face, right? And then at the end of the day, it's like, poor sweet girl, you're fine. You're fine. You overcame it.
Why aren't you over it now?
Yeah, you overcame it. But until I can make you feel it, then it's just, all right, well, what's the next topic?
Yeah, yeah. And that's kind of the society we live in is constant instant gratification.
Instant gratification. It's like, work has been amazing, but it's almost like it's gone.
Yeah.
You know, my coworker lost her husband, which is horrible. But he was nice to her, you know?
Yeah.
She loved him.
Yeah.
And he loved her. And they had an amazing life together. And one time my boss, and he didn't mean to say this, but it came out, it's like, well, she's been through worse. And in my mind thinking, how's that worse? Yeah. She lost a man that loved her and that she loved, and she has only good memories.
Mm-hmm.
I have a decade of memories with someone that has been lying to me the moment I met him and manipulating me. And, you know, and just having people learn to appreciate the pain and the torment that actually causes.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't go away. I just honestly don't know if this will ever go away from me.
I got a question. You said that the meth, when you found out about that was it. That was what if you had found out things in different order? Do you think it still would have been the meth? Like, if you found that out right at the beginning, or do you just think it was the straw? No matter what you had found out, it would have been the straw.
It was the cross-dressing I found out 3 weeks before the meth.
Okay.
I think, and the cross-dressing is when he got pretty violent and aggressive.
Do you think it's because you found out?
Yeah.
That's why he...
And we went on a family vacation like a week after the cross-dressing.
Oh, God. How awkward was that?
It's awful. And then, you know, a week later we went back to counseling, and then I checked him in. I don't know how it would have changed things. I just know that the meth, once I realized that, it was like this flood of information came back to me about all of the fantastical stories he had told me, and they were fantastical. About top secret research and top, you know, getting injected with HIV, but also top research on COVID and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And the list goes on and on and on. I think it just all came kind of crashing in. And I just realized there's nothing he's told me that's been true.
Yeah.
And I believed it all to be true.
So yours came crashing quick. Like, once it all started to tumble?
Once it all started to tumble, it started. I mean, it was taking a slow roll.
Yeah.
Over 2 years, but then it went.
Yeah. Was yours the same experience?
No. People always ask, were there red flags? Yes, there were red flags. Did I ever think the red flags would have added up to what it did? Never in my life. If I did, I would never have been in that situation. But I dismissed all of the red flags, which is what why I want to share my story, because what seemed like a small red flag ended up being a big red flag.
Yeah.
You know, the physical stuff started with flipping couch over with me sitting on it. Okay.
Well, you're not a very big girl, so it's probably easy.
Well, who needs to flip a couch over with me on it anyway?
I was just trying to clean underneath.
Trying to lighten the mood.
Yeah.
Yeah, flipping on the lights at 2 a.m. in the morning and jerking all the covers off to continue an argument. You know?
Really?
Yes.
Ugh.
I mean, those are the things that, you know, you're like, okay, well, you're being super stupid.
Was his drug related?
No, I would say, well, alcohol. I would say alcohol, maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's almost like an excuse. Like
Yeah.
the drug related or the alcohol related or whatever.
I don't think it's an
like-
excuse. It's
Actually,
it's
no,
just
I think that the drugs are a symptom
yeah.
of a bigger problem. Like,
So is alcohol, yeah.
yeah. And
Because
like,
obviously we're drinking alcohol and we're
yeah,
just
we're
fine.
not.
Well,
yeah.
yeah.
There's another little word, I guess, and I mean, there's not an official diagnosis, but it's called sociopath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
You know,
pretty sure that's in my
that's,
definition.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
and just like you said, I don't want to use it as an excuse. What I find it is it just amplifies a hidden symptom.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like my ex told me, ironically, you know, when he was semi-lucid, that he had been dressing up as a woman for his entire life. And it gave him comfort. And I'm researching it, and that is truly why some men cross-dress.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong with it is lying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that he had used cocaine and other drugs ever since he was in high school.
Yeah.
And all of that is a symptom of something that he's not dealing with.
Right.
Right.
Whether it was a trauma in his childhood or his own personality disorder, which he does have, or, you know, any of those things, it's something that he's not dealing with. And the meth, in the end, got him.
Yeah.
You know, it's just too strong of a drug. It just sent him over the edge, and he is over the edge now.
Yeah, and for me, let's be honest, we all are, you know, get angry, we yell, we say curse words, we do stupid stuff.
Yeah.
There's a difference in being angry and saying something that you regret and being angry and sawing through a dozen pairs of luxury shoes. I mean, maybe you're angry and you saw through one. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and say, you're so angry you saw through two. But by the time you make it through 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12.
Where it's labor intensive. Yeah.
Now, you know, now this isn't just anger that needs to be dismissed.
Yeah. Yeah. So in your guys' path, what is recovery like now with your clarity?
Ooh, we talked about that today at lunch. Ongoing, honestly. I've been in trauma therapy for over a year now. I've been doing a lot of EMDR work. Don't get me to
something. It's like a trauma therapy.
EMDR is what it's called?
EMDR work, yes.
It's like eye
for
rapid
PTSD.
movement,
Here's the best way that I can describe it, and I'm not an expert.
Remember the amygdala.
Yeah. So when you sleep, something bad happens to you. Somebody cuts you off in traffic or whatever, and you're upset, you know, throughout the day. You've got all these things that you've held on to throughout the day, and you're just a ball of nerves. And when you go to sleep, your brain automatically, and as you get into Miss Scientist, thank you, rapid eye movement, thank you, takes those things out of, I'm going to call it the emotional side of the brain. Nancy knows the real side.
Don't test me.
Yeah, but whatever. And it recategorizes that over into the logical side of your brain. So how many times have somebody said you're angry, you're going to fire off an email, and they say, don't, sleep on it tonight, and then come back. That's what's happening. Your body is processing, taking that thing and taking it out of your emotional side, put it into your logical side. And then the next day, you're calmer, you're collected. You can now respond to that email. You can be tactful.
Right.
You don't go off.
Emotionally and fired up. Yeah.
That's what EMDR therapy is doing with PTSD. So you have this trauma, trigger, whatever, that you're holding on to, and your body is subconsciously staying in this fight or flight mode. You cannot get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's taking those moments that are keeping you in that fight or flight, moving it from your emotional side of your brain to your logical side of your brain where you can actually calm down. You can think. The wolf is not at the door.
Process.
Every cop that I come across, I am a truthful person. They're going to believe me. They're not out to harm me. And so I've spent a lot of time on EMDR work this last year and PTSD.
Okay. So for those wondering, I found it. So it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And what it is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy involves a set of standardized steps that bring in a variety of elements from an array of different treatments and approaches. So without getting too in the weeds with that, if somebody wants to look it up, now they know what to look up. All I did was Google EMDR PTSD, and it showed me that. So.
Yeah. But I think it's ongoing. I mean, honestly, I don't know what's going to bubble up next. It has definitely helped me with the night terrors and flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
I no longer see a cop on the sidewalk and literally melt down into a puddle, start bursting into tears, and them looking at me like, what the heck is wrong with you?
Yeah. And you were able to come talk about it to a cop. I mean, that shows progression in itself.
Oh, you have
it was
no
difficult.
idea.
Yeah.
You have no idea how difficult it was.
We have so many meetings that she couldn't get a word out just between me and her and the other woman, Ravina, who was helping us with the website.
Yeah.
So this is like huge.
We've come a long ways in a year.
What about for you?
Lots of therapy weekly or twice weekly. I'm starting EMDR as soon as my therapist gets trained because I can't go to another therapist. It sends me into tears.
So they're getting trained specifically to help you. That's a good therapist.
Yeah, she's amazing.
That's great.
The one that she saved my life, but I just, I don't want to go to someone else, and you can't go to two therapists at the same time.
Yeah.
So that, and, like the future with me at work, I honestly hope that we're starting an employee resource group on domestic violence and safety and teaching people what domestic violence is and the measures they can put in place. And I hope that really catapults into something bigger in my company in terms of a charitable arm. And I want to kind of focus that attention on that. And then what Yvonne and I are planning with our website and the art exposition and, just focus on helping others. I'm still having to help myself, but helping others. And I think that's about it.
I think your guys' dynamic, the podcast may not be a bad idea. I would tell, I'm pretty, you guys don't know this, but I'm pretty straightforward. If I think something's a bad idea, I'm going to let you know. If I think it's a good idea, then I'm going to let you know. I could see you guys doing a podcast, make seasonally, however you want to do it. You don't have to do it like me. I just constantly, just, there's no end. I just keep putting it out, but you guys could do seasons or however you want to do it. But you guys have a good dynamic where you could.
We definitely have talked about a speaking series or what. This is actually the first time I would say we've
done anything
spoken outside our little trusted environments. Yeah. So today was a big day for us.
Yeah. It's exhausting.
But I
think
going
through all this.
You'll help people. I mean, I honestly think just the nuggets that you guys said, you're going to help somebody with this.
Absolutely. I think we both have said if we could reach one woman, if we could save one woman from going down the path that we went down, we would consider it a success.
Yeah.
I already know because my attorney has asked me to meet with other clients that he's working with.
Oh, really?
That's going through similar things.
Yeah.
Friends. I can't tell you how many times would you meet with this friend or somebody I know. So I already know it's working.
Yeah.
We've already blown through the just one.
Yeah. I will get you guys connected if you want with Cheryl's place.
Perfect.
That would be a good one. And then I don't know if you guys are connected with anybody from One Safe Place, but I think with what y'all are doing, let's say I'll use One Safe Place for an example. Maybe they're not aware of the situation for people in your shoes. So, because there's not a one size fits all for this issue.
Sure, absolutely. You know what? When your department is doing training on this topic, I'm not going to speak for you, but I feel like we would both like to come in and share our story in a different perspective. When attorneys are having their whatever lunch they do, I'd love to go in and talk to them about our experience, what worked, what didn't work.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I would love for, let's just say for the department I work at, if they just were mandated, in a sense, one, to either have you guys come in and speak, because I think in person is where the impact really is, or two, just listen to this episode when we're done. You know, like, hey, listen to this. Like, I need you to feel what is happening and what you may consider outside of the realm of possibility, because you guys are outliers. It's not a common story. And why is it not a common story? Is it not common because it doesn't happen as often, or is it not
hidden?
It's hidden.
It's
Yeah.
It's very subversive.
Yes.
And insidious.
Yeah. And it's that outside pressure. It's weird. It's a weird thing to talk about, but I keep constantly putting myself in your shoes, and I'm sitting there thinking, all right, there's no way I'd want my parents to think down on my wife. That's the first thing I thought. I wouldn't want them to think down on that person. But I'm already putting myself in kind of a
You have
Yeah.
two
a
daughters,
mindset.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I got my kids to think about. Yeah. So, and she's really nice to me, so I don't want to.
Well, thank God.
She's really good. Yeah, she puts up with my dumb shit. So she
That's
gave me.
my biggest fear about doing this was and if the kids ever hear it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we
or
both
their
fear
friends.
retaliation. I mean, we both still fear retaliation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very real threat.
Yeah. And one of the things I want to point out, and you two may be aware of it, maybe you're not, but when you're telling your stories, I can see the physical PTSD reactions that you can't fake. You could tell a story all day long, but you're like you may not be aware. You mess with your jewelry, and yours.
I do. I mean, mine is auditory. I do good to get sentences out, words out. I can't control this flood that comes out of my eyeballs. I have zero control over
and
it.
I was warned. I brought. You did strong. You didn't even have to use them. So, but those are the things. So, for as much as I said, like, cops are going to learn a lot from what they watched on here. But for the community watching, one of the things I want them to see, the things that I'm trained in looking and seeing, is the physical response when you're telling a story. And the physical response that you guys were having, there's no faking that. You can't fake that. You could be the best actor, actress in the world. And those are things that just military guys that suffer from PTSD, cops, first responders in general, they have those same things. Same thing. So it's important. If you're watching this, pay attention when you go back. Look at, you'll see. I will timestamp, and you'll be like, oh shit, let me go back and see. And they're gonna see your guys' physical response to your stories.
Yeah.
That's telling.
Yeah.
So, but
I'm so thankful I met you.
Oh, ditto.
so what's the website? What's the nonprofit going to be?
twogirlsandanapkin.com.
Okay, so it's all spelled out just like mine. It's TWO girls and AND a napkin ANAPKIN.com. I'm gonna show it to the camera right now. So if you're just listening only, it'll be on the YouTube. So I'm holding it up to the camera right now. I will actually type that out and put it on the video, so if somebody's watching.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you so much for having us.
Not a problem. You've also got the domestic violence hotline on here. It's 1-800-779-SAFE. That's 1-800-779-7233. Some people can, that's my radio voice.
Yeah, I had to order a new set of business cards because I had that number wrong.
Oh no.
Like, oh, you gotta be kidding me.
I'm going to show you one.
And those aren't cheap.
Yeah. Did we mention that we're not, we're a scientist and a banker.
Yeah. Totally.
So when we get done here, I will show you my business card. And you're going to be buying more new ones. You're gonna love it. So
awesome.
Oh gosh.
Is there
I just
anything
spent like a fortune on those? So
is there anything you'd like to leave people with before we go?
For me, if you are experiencing domestic violence or seeing it, you're not alone. And there's nothing that you have done to deserve whatever you're going through. Absolutely nothing. And there's nothing to be ashamed of. And it takes courage to see what you're going through and recognize it and choose to take a step to get yourself in a safe place. But once you do, your life will change.
Yeah. For me, I would say that I am so blessed to have been surrounded by an incredible group of people that recognize behaviors that I was unable to recognize for myself. And I would say if someone you know trusts you enough to confide something about their relationship, to hit pause for a second, and rather than saying, why don't you just leave? Why do you stay? Just take a moment and help me.
Take a moment and listen and try to hear what they're saying.
Thank you.
Because there's something else going on.
Yes, thank you.
That they need to be heard.
Gotcha. All right, ladies. Dr. Badass.
Cheers, Dr. Badass.
I've been called that before.
Right?
It's awesome.
Yes.
I know.
I had to change all my business cards.
There we go.
Salute. Thank you, Eric.